Hi, my name is Rebecca Winter of Strong Mama Yoga. One of the most common questions that I'm asked about prenatal yoga is it okay to practice plank throughout my pregnancy? And the answer is maybe. We're going to look at some of the reasons why you may choose or not choose to practice plank, and also some variations of plank that are safe and effective throughout your pregnancy. So, the biggest concern with doing a traditional plank in pregnancy is that it puts a lot of pressure on the rectus abdominis. So, those are the muscles that we think about when we think about getting a six pack. They're the muscles that you can really see in a square formation across the front of the abs in someone who has very little body fat, and they are held together in the center by the linea alba, which is a strip of connective tissue that runs from about your xiphoid process down to the base of your navel. In fact, during pregnancy, many of us form what's called a linea nigra, which is a darkening of the skin around the line of that linea alba. And that helps give us a nice visual of where that line is. Well, what happens naturally in pregnancy is as our belly grows, especially for many of us who get larger in pregnancy, like I did when I had a 10-pound baby inside of me, is that that connective tissue starts to stretch to give room for baby, and that actually um, s- causes some separation of the rectus abdominis, of those core muscles in the front. For most of us, or many of us, I should say, that separation heals in the postpartum process. And several of us, myself included, need to do some extra work in the postpartum period to help coach those fibers back together, to bring that rectus abdominis back together. So we don't want to do anything during pregnancy to make that separation worse. This is the main reason you hear people say, don't do your crunches and your sit ups during pregnancy. You don't want to do anything that puts more pressure than you need to on the rectus abdominis. But that doesn't mean that we don't want to strengthen our core at all. We still benefit from core strengthening during pregnancy, just not focused on the rectus abdominis. We want to focus more on the obliques, which run along the sides of our torso, and the transverse abdominis that runs along the front and helps actually support the uterus, and the pelvic floor. You'll see I have another video just about pelvic floor in yoga. And then also the muscles along the low back. By strengthening the supporting core muscles around the growing uterus, that really helps to ward off some of the low back pain that a lot of us feel in later in pregnancy and in postpartum. And it also can help with hips, and it helps with spinal alignment. Not only that, but especially by strengthening the obliques, the transverse abdominis, and the pelvic floor, it can actually make the birthing process easier and faster, and it helps pull everything back together faster in postpartum. So there are a lot of benefits to working our core, and a plank pose, excuse me, is a very good way to help strengthen the core. We might just not want to do it in the most traditional way. Now, when it comes to planking in pregnancy, for most of the variations that I'm showing, I'm going to ask you not to do unless you already had a strong plank either in your yoga practice or in your fitness practice pre-pregnancy. Their plank poses can be complex, and you want to know what it feels like when you're not pregnant and you're in a good, strong plank before you start losing that stability in pregnancy and trying to figure out what is a good plank. Is my core really engaged when I'm in plank? So please make sure that you already have plank in your practice before continuing on with this video. So if you're in your first trimester and you're not really showing yet, or you're in the beginning of your second trimester and you were super strong before pregnancy, you may choose to continue with your traditional plank pose. I'll be honest, in my first pregnancy, I did. I don't feel that I personally took enough time to heal my diastasis recti between my first and second pregnancies. And by the time my second pregnancy rolled around, I chose to not practice the traditional plank at all. So you do need to make that decision for yourself. We unfortunately don't have any scientific research to tell you exactly when it's safe to practice plank and for exactly how long. If you are going to choose in that first and second trimester to practice your plank position, I'm going to encourage you to first start out on your knees. So even those without plank in their practice can always do this one. And I'm coming forward so that my shoulders are really nicely over my wrists. I want to have good stability there. If your knees are bothering you, you can also put a blanket or a towel underneath them. And from here, I want to start to feel my core. So I'm going to imagine I'm hugging baby in, and I want to start to hug in all of the muscles that surround my core. So again, I'm not talking about just bringing my belly button to spine. I'm talking about hugging in 360 degrees here. So your back is just the back of your front. Your front is just the front of your back. You want to start squeezing in all of those muscles that hug the whole low spine here. And it's not until I feel that strong connection with all of those muscles, and you'll see that I'm kind of wiggling my spine here so that I can feel the length in my spine. Once I feel that, then I'm going to tuck my toes and bring my hips up. Now, you also might notice that I have my feet at hip width apart. Even if you're just in your first trimester, you're not even showing it all, I'm going to encourage you to bring your feet that wide. And then technically you can get wider as you get bigger, but once your belly is really starting to show and feeling some weight, that's when I personally would encourage you to nix the knees up plank. So you can still go ahead and work your core like this, and you can even take your little chaturangas, and I'm really hugging baby in as I'm doing that. But I'm not going to bring my knees up then, because as much as you might have a really strong core and you're doing your best to hug everything in, gravity is working against you. The weight of the uterus, the placenta, the baby is going to be already taxing the rectus abdominis and starting that separation at the linea alba. So why make it worse? There are other ways we can strengthen our core. So let's look at some variations on plank. So another way that I really like to get into plank in pregnancy is starting in gate pose. So bringing one foot out, one knee bent, and I have a nice straight line here, and then bringing the arms nice and wide. Now from here, I can get into a side plank. So side plank is the variation that I'm going to encourage you to really think about in pregnancy. We just discussed how the most important core muscles to strengthen in pregnancy are those obliques and the transverse abdominis. Side plank is perfect for that without putting too much weight on the rectus abdominis. Now, this version of gait, I can practice even if I don't have plank in my practice previously, because this is a pretty simple way to do it. I still am getting a benefit here. I'm hugging baby in. I can feel that my obliques are firing up, and I'm also starting to get a nice stretch in the front of my hip flexors. This is a really good warm-up plank to do as well if you're going to work more into side plank. It can also really help if you're dealing with any sort of round ligament pain or if your hip flexors are feeling tight, which they often do as we progress through pregnancy. So from here, I can start to challenge those obliques and the transverse abdominis more by flexing through my foot and bringing my leg up. So now this is really firing up obliques. I've got the side of my hip firing up, my piriformis, some of my glutes, and my transverse abdominis in front is working as well. Now I can even bring in my Kegels here, starting to engage my pelvic floor. And this is a lovely way to get a little bit of that core work without having to worry about the weight from the front of my belly. For some of you, that might not be enough. So if you had side plank in your practice already, this is where you can get into your more traditional side plank. So now I can go ahead and bring one foot either under the other, or I can put one foot in front of the other, which gives me a bit more stability. I want you to check in with your shoulders. So I'm not in a great position here. I'm going to readjust. I want to make sure that my shoulder is over my wrist. We have a lot more laxity in our joints during pregnancy thanks to the relaxin hormone. So it's even more important to make sure that your joints are nice and stable. You don't need a shoulder injury during pregnancy, right? So I can bring my feet again, either one on top of the other or side by side, and bring my arm up. You can look in any direction, up, forward, down, and I'm hugging that baby in. And then if you want that super burn, woo, you can bring that leg up and really feel that transverse abdominis and those hips fire up. Also, if you're still small enough and that was too much, you can bring a foot in front, a knee in front rather, foot on the ground. And now I feel a little bit more on my lower obliques into that transverse abdominis. So another great way to get into that tissue. Great. So those are a few variations that you can play with. You can add it into a flow, or you can just work into your plank. Definitely think about warming up your core before you just hop right into your plank or your side plank. And I did show you this with my hand down, but some of you might be more comfortable taking plank with an elbow down, and that's fine too. I just want you to really check in. Shoulder, elbow are right aligned with each other. Arm is 90 degrees. Palm is down to let me feel nice and secure. And then again, I could start like this, a little harder because I'm taller here. Or you can go right into your side plank. And this is just another way to work that. So choose what works for you. Personally, I actually feel less pressure in my shoulder when my arm is straight. Some people feel less with their arm bent. So play around. If you do ever start to feel really sore through the rectus abdominis when you're practicing plank, please stop. Again, that's just not an area that we need to be focusing on during pregnancy. I hope you enjoyed this video. You can check out more at strongmama.yoga.